Hi, my name is Natalie Miller. I work at the Marion County Prosecutor's Office as a paralegal and have been employed here since 2016. I first heard about this job when I was in the paralegal studies program at IUPUI. My bachelor's degree in psychology from Franklin wasn't getting me much anywhere in terms of seeking employment, so I enrolled here in hopes of having better luck. For my third semester, I decided I wanted to do some kind of field experience and not spend all my time in the lecture hall, so I applied for an internship. And it was a pretty typical process. I just submitted a resume and cover letter to an email address and had a 15-minute interview that didn't deviate too much from, I think, a typical job interview. As far as my process of disclosure went, I did not have to disclose that I had autism because my resume more or less did it for me. Ever since I was 12, I've been immersing myself in disability advocacy, and all of my experience at the time tied back to that in some way, to where it was pretty much a dead giveaway that I had autism. And since it was an internship as opposed to a regular job, I figured the stakes would not be quite as high, and maybe they'd be willing to look past that, as where a lot of the jobs I'd applied for prior to that did not. Thankfully, things worked in my favor, and I started interning in January of 2016. And as far as my accommodations went, I didn't apply for anything specific. The closest thing I have to accommodation is taking smaller, more frequent breaks midday to clear my head, make sure that I tackle all of my duties with a clear mind. And thankfully, as long as I was getting my work done, my bosses really don't care if I do this. I didn't have to apply for anything formally. I didn't have to ask or go to the higher ups or anything. I just go to my supervisor and say I need to take 15 minutes away, and they'll often give it to me. My strengths on the job are in a couple different ways. Because of my autism, I tend to have very keen attention to detail, which when you're redacting a document for review proves to be quite handy. I also tend to get along well with everybody, and I'm not afraid to contribute my own ideas to public discussions. My challenges tend to include communication, which again is typical for individuals on the autism spectrum. And also I've got rather high anxiety, so that can occasionally hinder my progress, which is why I take the more frequent breaks to keep it in check. And also communicating when I need help. I'm extremely self-sufficient, so admittedly, asking for help, even if I do truly need it, has never been my strength. And as far as how I deal with that, a large chunk of it is, again, taking the breaks to deal with the anxiety, speaking calmly and thinking before I communicate. And as far as asking for help, it's eventually I just need to swallow my pride and communicate it, as hard as that is for me to do. For individuals with autism who are looking for work, my best advice was to be as involved in your employment process as possible. Communicate what it is you're ultimately hoping for, and be realistic. Careers are built over time, so you're probably not going to get exactly what you want right out of the gate, but look for opportunities that'll be good stepping stones to get you where you want to be. Because the hardest part by far is just getting your foot in the door. Once you've got some experience on your belt, people will look at that on your resumes and whatnot. And again, be engaged, talk to your counselors and employment providers. If you have caregivers or parents involved, make sure they know what you're hoping for. And also devote any spare time to improving your self-sufficiency, be it at volunteer opportunities, school, chores, whatever. You're gonna feel so much better prepared investing that time responsibly versus if you spend it playing video games, binging Netflix and whatnot. For voc rehab counselors, my advice to you would be to, obviously you guys have experience in this field, use that to your advantage, but don't completely discount what the individual wants. I did voc rehab once, and even though I learned some very useful things like interview skills, teaching applicable stuff is another thing I'd recommend. Focus on things that they could take to use at any point in their careers. But I didn't feel like I had much of a say in my process. So they focused more on what my parents thought would be good for me. Not to say that caregivers and parents' opinions don't have a place. I think they do, but ultimately it's the individual's life that's going to be invested in whatever career ends up manifesting. So their voice and their wants should take center stage. Teach them to think realistically, help them create a plan that's feasible, but be there for them and listen to them, because who knows, you may be the only person in their life who is giving them any sort of credit whatsoever. My time at the Marion County Prosecutor's Office has been extremely rewarding. However, it's also given me a clear idea of what I want to do, and it differs considerably from what I thought I wanted to do when I first started. When I first started, I thought I wanted to go to law school and start my own firm because I loved studying law when I was in those classes so much. However, I decided to take a break from any more schooling and build my career and figure out exactly what it was I wanted. In 2019 or so, I started really investing in disability advocacy as a representative of our office, eventually getting involved with APSI and becoming a member of their Indiana Board of Directors by the end of that year. So, and just spending time with other people passionate about improving that quality of life has told me that I eventually want to do that for my life's work. So I recently decided I want to go back to graduate school for my master's, potentially my doctorate later down the line, and want to work in either academia or nonprofit so I can equip other businesses to become more disability friendly, which I've already been doing to an extent here at MCPO. In 2016, I created the Different Not Less initiative, which is aimed at providing employment opportunities as well as increasing general disability activism in the area. We even had our first hiring success earlier this year with a young man through Best Buddies Jobs. And I'm hoping to recruit a few more people after COVID subsides. I've really found my calling doing this sort of thing, and I want to be able to use my experience and my story to help benefit other people and make the world a better place for people with disabilities.